my podcast to be. It's just, you're not going to get enough information in 45 minutes to an hour. So I typically allow myself at least 90. And I appreciate when my guests, are a bit flexible. So great.
Of course. Yeah. Cool.
All right, cool. So I will just do like a short introduction, basically tell everybody welcome to the podcast, whatever, and then we'll just pretty much get straight into things.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Science and Chill podcast. Today, I am very excited to speak with Ingri Pauline. Ingri, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, what's up? Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. And we also had a lot of people who seem to be excited on Twitter about you appearing and a lot of listener questions. I'm excited to get to those. Before we get into our conversation today, though, can you just tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Ingri Pauline. I am a very elevated big dumb jock. I'm like a holistic weightlifting coach, and I say holistic just because I like to look at like my clients as a whole human being. We address not only fitness and nutrition, but also stress management and lifestyle. Because the areas that I specialize in is women-specific issues in fitness. So pre and postpartum, syncing with the menstrual cycle, and then going into perimenopause and menopause. And since I tend to attract clients with like some hormonal issues or just women who are feel completely outside of themselves or feel like they're kind of victims in their bodies or victims to their mood swings, it's so important that I address like the whole person and not just fitness and nutrition, because that's a little bit too deep.
Yeah, absolutely. And could you maybe provide a little bit of a background on maybe your education and sort of your career up to this point, how, maybe where you started out in terms of your interest in the subject, and then what led you to the sort of coaching practice where you're at now?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a rocky story. I was actually when I was 19 and 20, I served in the United States Navy. I was the eighth woman to qualify for a special operations program that had been open for 15 years. And so that was a really big honor. And I worked my tail off to like keep up with the guys and a lot of times outdo them. And I was like a stellar athlete and a good like academic recruit for the program. But after about 2.5 years, like I went from being able to do almost 60 push-ups in 2 minutes and like 9 pull-ups to like 4 and done. And it was literally within 1 week, like my body just completely crashed. And I remember I did like one day it was like 8:30 in the morning and we were getting ready for our like morning PT run. And I did like the worst thing a woman can do in special operations, which I just started crying.
Oh, no.
I started running and my legs felt like they were moving through molasses and I just started crying. And I was like, oh no. And I like couldn't hold it in anymore. But it was just yeah, and that was unfortunately that was like the first day of like some of my last days in the United States Navy. But I learned a lot from that experience. And since then I went to college. I got my bachelor's in kinesiology. I worked in physical therapy throughout my entire time in the university. And then when I got out, I kind of like just ran away for a little bit, did some backpacking, and then I landed in Berlin. I had lived there before and I speak German. And so I started working with the Charité University Hospital in Berlin. Their obstetrician, like their chief of obstetrics, knew my mom and knew that I had a background in weightlifting and physical therapy. And he asked me if I could work with postpartum mothers at home. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I can totally do that. And then so I started looking into women's health, fitness, and wellness and women's issues. And this was like 2013, 2014. There was not a lot of information on like pelvic floor health and postpartum fitness and fitness there was a little bit more on fitness and pregnancy, but there was almost nothing on postpartum. And I was just like, wow, this is a huge gap in like really vital information, considering that 80% of all women are postpartum, which means that 40% of this of the population
Mhm.
is postpartum, and we have no way to address it. And I was just like, that's it. Like, this is it. Like, I cleared all the men off my roster and went completely like women's health and fitness. And then I started digging into the menstrual cycle training. And this was really interesting because anybody, like, if you're into like a little bit of the more like scientific pedantic of strength training, we know that strength is a hormonal adaptation to resistance training. And it would make sense that if you have hormonal fluctuations, then obviously it's going to affect your strength and how you lay down like strength foundations, right? And how you build muscle. So I was like, this is like, it just fascinated me. And then I just ended up going down this rabbit hole of like women's health and fitness. And my mom was a OBGYN, and like I found out my my grandma was, she was a surgical nurse and a midwife, and then my great grandma was a midwife, a rural midwife in Norway. So this is this is like the fourth generation of women's health that has been in my family, and I embraced it with like everything. And I was just like, that's like, I'm full blown like women's health and fitness, women's fitness related issues. I'm going to do everything I can to promote science and to promote information, because women honestly know so little about their body in general and how their cycle works. It's like, and then they become victims to it. So a lot of the things that women experience in their during their cycle and their mood swings and their weight gains and like how they handle stress, and like not only are we responding to just sort of like external societal pressure, but it's like you're also like, this is a response of ignorance, and not in a insulting way, but just like, no, you literally don't know better. Because like when we talk about our menstrual cycle, all we do is ever talk about menses, the day that you bleed, and nobody
Mhm.
even knows what a healthy period looks like, or what an unhealthy period looks like, or any of the phases, or how, and PMS gets a bad rap. And so I'm just here to just be like, no, dude, like there's so many gifts to being a woman, and even menstruation. And like when you know how to use it, like your body, your life, how you handle things just becomes so much simpler and smoother and more pleasant. And you appreciate being a woman more.
Yeah, absolutely. And in doing kind of research, I was listening to you on a few other podcasts, and one of the things that stood out was, you were mentioning, rather than women like fighting their cycle, like use it as sort of like a tool. Like once you have enough information, you can kind of strategically use it to sort of optimize all these areas. And we're definitely going to talk about that later on. I just wanted to kind of go back to, you said you got on this track of being interested in women's health and basically just all, screw men, I'm just going to focus on all women's health, which is great. But I'm just curious, where you maybe got a lot of your scientific, say, anatomical, physiological information on women. Because what's insane to me is that pretty much all of the textbooks in exercise physiology, biochemistry, exercise metabolism, whatever, I mean, a lot of it basically is rooted in science that was conducted in men. I mean, for a large part, even up until the past 10 years or so, I mean, exercise physiology research has really just been a male dominated, not in just, males doing kind of the research, but also in being the study participants. I mean, college age males pretty much is like who all of these classic physiology studies are done on. So, you have an exercise science degree, as do I, a bachelor's in kinesiology. And so like, you obviously have good information on exercise physiology, but when you started to get more interested in women's health, where did you look for information, or did you sort of just use the classical textbooks, or did you maybe mix and match between kind of your sources and how you learned or started to learn about, what you were going to use to start training women and learning more about women and physiology?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question, because like I was just thinking about like I cannot wait for the day like in an exercise physiology textbook where there's like a whole chapter on like the pelvic floor and core.
Mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm.
right now it's just the trunk, right? And so like a lot of people like if you want to mess up your whole life, mess up your breathing, right? Like
Right.
we make sure that these things are working in harmony, and that we're breathing correctly, and that we're not inducing panic attacks in ourselves and stuff like that, right? But also that we're bracing correctly. But honestly, it's like it's been a patchwork of things. So it is I tell people, especially when they're looking for like what to look for in a coach and personal trainer. Honestly, like I know that like I tell them to look for somebody first who has a degree in exercise physiology or has trained under somebody that's fantastic in the sport. Like if you're looking for like a sports specific trainer, like you're gonna look for somebody who trained under like one of the greats, like Zach Hommel, like he trained under Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell, who's like a physics and physiology self-trained specialist. But
Wow.
like honestly, like your best personal trainers, your best information are gonna have a core of like really organized, like they're gonna know about metabolic pathways, they're gonna know about anatomy, they're gonna know about exercise physiology, strength and conditioning basics. And then the best ones are gonna keep on learning. And that's basically what I've done is like I've read so many books, I've talked to just because like I'm super hooked up because of my mom, like I've been able to talked to a lot of doctors. I even met this man named Dr. Artal, Dr. Paul Artal, oh, excuse me, Raul Artal, who wrote the first book on exercise and pregnancy in 1992. And
Very
everybody
cool.
thought he was so crazy. Yeah, but he's like running experiments on pregnant women.
Yeah.
And it was like nobody wanted to fund his studies, nobody,
Hmm.
nothing. And he was an OBGYN. And he was like, this is ridiculous. Like these women need help right now. We're just telling them not to pick up anything over 20 pounds. He's like, I have a professional marathon runner. I have a competitive equestrian rider. I don't like, what am I supposed to tell them about pregnancy and exercise? And he could literally tell them nothing. So he started conducting studies. So it's like talking to doctors, doing a lot of self-study, and then also just perusing the medical journals on occasion. Like if I can get somebody's login, or even PubMed is a good spot if I want some numbers. But like there's also problems with that because like a lot of the studies conducted on females in fitness, like there's almost no indication whether they're on hormonal birth control or not. And then I also like I truly believe that if we start doing cycle sync training studies, that we need long-term training. Like they only ever train these people for like the studies are only ever one menstrual cycle. And I believe that after 6 months of like working with and doing cycle syncing, I believe that your performance will be increasingly
Hmm.
better. And I would like to see studies like that. Um, but it's been a patchwork. There's a couple. I'm like looking at my books because I'm like, oh, I go get the book.
Reference on the
There's a
fly.
yeah, but there's a couple of really like I mean they're out there. There's a couple of really fantastic female doctors and naturopaths and stuff like that. And then also Girls Gone Strong is a really fantastic resource for women-centered health. What is it? The postpartum Brianna Battles is really fantastic. I also work with this chiropractor she's the pelvic floor stuff that I use because a lot of the pelvic floor stuff is focused around like tuck, tighten, pull in, and it's just actually causing more pelvic floor
Hmm.
issues, just like hypertonic pelvic floor issues that end up giving out. So I have worked with this like chiropractor out in Norfolk, Virginia, who is just she is so fantastic and so knowledgeable. And her pelvic floor program made me pull mine off and be like, I have to write it again. Like I can't. I like because hers was so good and it was so thoughtful and it was much more relaxed and realistic than this like pull the belly button, pick up blueberries with your vaginal canal, like giggle. Like it was just really crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's just been relentless self-study seriously since 2014. And like, but luckily now in the past like 3 years, like it's just been like there's so much more information and it's fantastic.
Yeah, man. I mean, just to hear you say that like you're like in the past 3 years, so this is such a recent thing that it's kind of crazy. I mean, the fact that
Yeah,
the doctor that you were referencing who wrote the book in like 1992. I mean, that was just 30 years ago. It's like, man,
yeah,
this stuff has existed for over 100 years, physiology and kind of like anatomy research, but just
yeah,
until 30 years ago, we were starting to do
yeah,
consider that women were maybe not special in some way or different, I
yeah.
guess, rather
Dude,
than men. So.
Socrates back 2000 years ago noticed that the working women, like the labor force and the slaves, they fared much better through during and through childbirth and after childbirth
Hmm.
than the nobles because like when nobles got pregnant, they just went on bed rest. And then so like none of their muscles are moving, the baby's just getting
Hmm.
bigger and bigger. And then they have no structural support to support the actual act of birthing. And he's like, dude, all these ladies carrying around pails and doing manual labor, they're just like 3 pushes, let's go. So it's like this is like like we've known women are different for a long time. We haven't studied them. Oh, I also wanted to say it wasn't until March of 1994 that I believe it might have been ACOG. I forgot the or maybe it was just the AMA, the American Medical Association. There was a large group of doctors, a large like nationally recognized group of doctors that finally they made like a medical law, like they made a decree that said you have to study women
Mm.
because we know so little about women and their physiology, and like that you conducting all of these studies on men is harmful to women, and now we're starting to see it. That was in 1994. That wasn't that long ago, and it's like so sad that like people had to be like, no, you have to study women, because nobody even bothered.
Yeah, well, what's crazier, I mean, so that was, in 1992, you said, or 1994. I mean, it was
94.
only until this past year, I think in 2020, where the American Physiological Society, so I'm a member of the APS, and I'm on like I'm an assistant on the editorial board, and they're involved in kind of my area of cardiovascular research. They recently just basically put something in place where they're starting in 2022, I guess it's 2022 now, but later on this year, they're not even going to be considering accepting any studies where female participants weren't included unless there was kind of a hard reason why they couldn't be. So,
Yeah.
maybe you're studying a process that doesn't even occur in females or something, for instance. But
Yeah.
basically, there is this push in physiology research, and then in particular in like cardiovascular physiology research, to study females and include females in all studies, or just conduct studies in only females, which I think, is super important, because there is this whole debate, not to go like on a tangent, but recently it's been a very recent area of interest in like cardiovascular vascular physiology, that throughout the hormonal cycle, cardiovascular function might change in females, and so there's like this big push to standardize that in all these studies, report what phases you're studying women in, whether they're on oral contraceptives or whether they're naturally cycling and things like that. So it's very, it's a lot of progress is being made, which is super important. And I think it's just like, honestly, the reason for the non-inclusion of women in previous studies is just due to like laziness. It's like, oh my gosh, well, we have to control for their menstrual cycle. Oh my gosh, like forget it. We're just going to study males because they're easier, which is, it's ridiculous, and it's not an excuse, but that's just kind of the way that things were done.
I mean, honestly, I mean, I get it. Like when you do have to, like, I mean, a scientist to scientist, like when you do have to do a study and there's so many more control groups, you're like, oh my God, fuck my life. Like,
it's
like,
insane.
wait a second. Now I have these 2 categories just grew to 8. Like, and now I have to do controls for them. But yeah, I'm glad you're hip to the skip, because the cardiovascular research is really important, especially in women, because in endurance athletes, like women are prone to overheat and like heat exhaustion during the last half of their cycle more so than they are in the first half, and it's like, there's a reason why, and we need to know how to A, get around it, or B, work with it. So yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's great that, there's science being done. There's obviously a lot more progress needs to be made, but I think the fact that a lot of these societies are saying like, listen, you have to include women or we're not even going to like publish your study, is sort of an incentive for scientists to basically say, oh, okay, we have to kind of do this. We don't really have a choice at this point. So it's good.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I want to get into talking about, these cycle syncing concepts. And before we do that, maybe just, I would like to maybe just ask what maybe some of our biggest maybe misconceptions are, or our expectations just around women in general, of like sports or work in kind of our modern culture. Again, I've heard you talk about some of this on some podcasts that I was listening to that you had appeared on, but I would just want to, are there any, I guess not expectations, but are there any issues with women's health or issues with the way that we view it in our modern culture that kind of maybe you're specifically addressing, or that maybe, need to be addressed regarding mostly work, but also kind of physical performance?
I mean,
I know that's a very broad question. We might need 5 hours.
I know, right? Like also like for my tangential rants and stuff. No, it is. So I am like 100% like, women can do like the same work, or give the same everything. Women can, and oftentimes outwork men, but we can't necessarily do it all the time. And that's okay. And especially when we are talking about like now that we have this new society that like a lot of the workforce is like work from home, like there's a lot, I mean, I understand that there's a lot of low wage workers that are like, it is just time served, it's the nature of the job. But like when we talk about people who are perhaps like anywhere in the middle class, or even like we have so many work from home opportunities, and there are so many women that are self-employed or like running their own businesses, no matter how big or small they are. Like there's really so much room for variability and planning ahead, and like making sure, and not just showing up and doing the exact same thing every day. Like yes, consistency is key, but I would say that for women, like planning ahead is the key of keys. Like it is and honestly, it's in our nature. Like women are preparers, like men are like, they are ready. They like are ever ready, and they men are the sun, they come up and they shine every single day, and occasionally it's cloudy, but whatever,
You're giving us too much
women.
credit, I think, but
I love men. I'm a big fan of men. Like I'm lucky and on and blessed enough to have only known mostly good men in my life. So and then women are more like the moon, and we have times where we are full and luminescent and full of energy, and we have times that we are just want to be withdrawn and want to take care of our own stuff and be alone. And all like both of these things serve purposes. But like one of the other things that like is in a female nature, like in feminine nature, is to also just like to prepare and to plan ahead. And like if we approach that with our training and with our, especially like our workload, we can be so much more productive over the long haul. Because what I see a lot in my clients, like I don't have a lot of 20-year-old clients. Like I have a lot of 30, 40-year-old clients, late 30s to early 50s. That is my like big client demographic, because it's usually women that have been ignoring their bodies for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And now they feel the repercussions. They have mood swings that are so bad, they're affecting their relationships. They either sleep too much or they can't sleep at all. They have trouble calming down. They have incredibly painful periods. They have low libido. Their skin is messed up. It's just like there's a whole litany of problems that aren't necessarily in allopathic, and you can't necessarily diagnose them as having any disease or disorder, but they're like, I feel like, and I say this phrase a lot because it's very true. I feel like a victim in my body or of my body, or I feel like a victim of my cycles. I can't control my behavior. I can't control my energy. I have so many things to do, and I feel as though I have so little time to do them. And so like the cycle syncing benefits, like that's why like I'm all about long-term studies, and because it's like we need to see these things after like 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, you know what I mean? Because like I've met women in their late 30s that have like I knew an engineer who worked on a she didn't work on an oil rig platform, but she worked in the industry and she was one of the engineers. So she was frequently going out to these oil rigs, and she was around so many men, and she had such a stressful job. And she felt as though she had to like keep up the exact same things that they were doing, which is like, you kind of do, you kind of don't, But she ended up losing her period, just because, not because of like low body fat or anything like that, but just because she was so used to ignoring any kind of like any sort of physical signal to rest or stop, and she never gave herself like a minute to like plan work ahead, that she just ended up losing her period. And it's like I mean, and that's like the most benign, that's like one of the more benign cases. Like I know women were like, I'm 44 years old. Whenever I start to get my period, like I get crazy mood swings enough that like I am yelling viciously at my husband 1 minute and crying the next, and like I'm worried about our marriage. But it's like, dude, these things, like this is what happens after years and decades of ignoring your body's signal to like chill the F out, or to like go do other things. And it's not that I'm asking you, and like when we talk about like the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, it's like when you have menses, it's like, yeah, take a day off and like just chill, phone it in, order a pizza, drop the kids off at grandma's, like do whatever you got to do. You know what I mean? Like, hey, Bob, message received. We'll reply back in 48 hours. Wink. You know what I mean? Like just create some space for yourself, and then start to go and like review your tasks and review and do these stuff that usually doesn't get done. And so anyway, so it's a long-term benefit. I completely went so far off, I forgot what the question.
No, that's okay. We were just, again, my question was pretty broad, but I
Yeah.
find it interesting because, obviously, I've talked on and off with my wife just about these things. And like, we were having a discussion one time, and I remember that she brought up how she will schedule work meetings if they're like a Zoom meeting or something during when she knows she'll be, in the mood for a work meeting, or like, when
Yeah.
she's kind of in that
Green.
time of
Yeah.
month when she needs to schedule a work meeting, and that other time she'll schedule where she's just kind of doing work where she doesn't have to like meet with anybody. And I was like, oh wow, so
Yeah.
intuitively she was, and not intuitively, I mean, she's, very in tune with kind of her body and things like that. But I was just like, oh wow, that's cool. And that was kind of the first time I'd ever heard a woman like speak of something like that, like
Yeah.
planning
Let's get
meetings or
into
whatever around
that.
the month. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and get right into it, since
Yeah.
we're already
Because
kind
I
of
was gonna say,
broaching on the topic.
yeah, if I don't give an overview, us continuing to talk like this is
Yes,
like it's gonna lose so much context.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
let's talk about, first of all, what is cycle syncing, because we've brought it up many times. So people are like, what the
Yeah.
hell is this? So yeah, tell everyone what is cycle syncing, and then we can talk some specifics.
Yeah. Yeah. So cycle syncing is basically just using your menstrual cycle as cues to how to plan your training, your fitness, nutrition, and your I call it creative planning. And that's basically whatever tasks that you have to do around for your house or the community or your work or whatever it is. Because like most women, I mean, honestly, like most women are like they're raising a family and doing something else at the same time. Even women who are just stay-at-home moms, quote end quote, right? They're usually doing like so many other things. I meet very few women who are like just kind of sitting around and only raising their kids and like
Mhm.
taking care of the house. I feel like that's very rare. But anyway, but yeah, so there are actually so just for the more science minded and then for like women, so it's like so in science we talk about it's a biphasic cycle. We talk about the follicular phase, which is basically the first half of the cycle, which actually include which is starts from the first day of your period to ovulation. So that includes menses, the follicular phase, and ovulation. And then we talk about, and then there's the luteal phase, which is basically the last half of your cycle. In the follicular phase, this is where testosterone and estrogen are going up. And these are the anabolic hormones of the body. They lay down muscle, they make you feel good, they're very energetic. These are like the muscle building hormones of our cycle. And then in the luteal phase, so estrogen and testosterone peaks at ovulation, right? This is when women feel very cute, their skin is clear, the voice is more feminine. We're just like our flowers in full bloom because we're trying to procreate, right? So and that's when it peaks. And then there is like a pretty sharp decline in testosterone and estrogen. It's not like one day, but it's a couple of days. And then what happens is that progesterone takes over, and this is more of the catabolic hormone. There is another little bump in estrogen about a week before your period. So that would be 1 week after ovulation or 1 week before your period. You get a little bump in estrogen. And then if that bump is too high, that's where you start to see like estrogenic. That's where you start to see a lot of the symptoms of painful periods, like fibroids, endometriosis, adenomyosis, stuff like that. Those are like estrogen excess disorders that surround the menstrual cycle. But anyway, but this luteal phase is mostly dominated by progesterone, which is an androgen, but it's also a catabolic hormone. So this is like the hormone that's getting ready. Whereas testosterone and estrogen are building up, your flushes it all out. And it like the progesterone hormone is more of like I got dinged in a scientific article that I wrote for this. I was like, it favors sleep. And they're like, hormones can't favor anything. They're like, okay,
Mhm.
fine, I'll use the scientific terminology. But no, it really does favor sleep. It favors comfort. It like has more of it is the opposite of what testosterone and estrogen do, which is the gregarious. Like we think about like all the what is it, the Myers-Briggs personalities, all the E's and then all the I's, right?
Mhm.
Progesterone is the more of the introverted of the hormones. And then and yeah, so we have this follicular phase and the follicular phase and then the luteal phase. And then also keep in mind that this drop in testosterone and estrogen, but also the rise in progesterone, it's also going to raise your your core temperature, your basal metabolic rate, by just like half a degree or a full degree, depending on who you are and what you do. And this is why, and then that also actually increases the amount of calories that women tend to burn on a daily basis. So this is also like the core of why a week before the period starts, women start to get cravings, is basically for one whole week before, they've been in a caloric deficit of anywhere from 100 to 300 calories a day, depending on your activity level and your height. And then so like then you get 1 week before your period, and like we have nutritional deficiencies, we have an increase in hormones, we have a high hormonal phase, progesterone that's like, leave me alone. And like, and we're in a caloric deficit. So obviously there's definitely stuff we can take to make this last half of our cycle much. So that's like the biphasic scientific principle of what I teach. And that's like, if you go to science textbooks, that's what it's going to say. How I teach it in a much more like esoteric, feminine, archetypal sort of way, along with the science. Like I don't completely throw out the science, but basically, in fact, the science is the basis of it. It gives it legitimacy. But honestly, I don't even need science. I just say this to women. I'm like, oh, sync with your menstrual cycle, you'll do a lot better. And they're like, that makes sense. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, of
Right.
course. Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. But
Honestly, giving too much of the science could sometimes just like turn people away from it almost. So I think the way that you approach
yeah,
it is probably more beneficial.
yeah. In fact, there's a book by this really wonderful exercise physio. She's got a PhD in exercise physiology, and she's a competitive endurance athlete. And like, I don't know how many triathletes you know, but like they have a certain degree of ruthlessness to their personality.
Yeah.
This woman definitely has it. Like she is completely science minded, and she even made an app. And like honestly, like her book is groundbreaking, and the app is awesome. But well, the app is kind of clunky. But it was like she and her partner were so focused on making it scientifically correct and like proving it with science that it actually lost any of like the lived experience and like the livability of working with your cycle. You know what I mean? It's like no woman actually cares about the hormone changes. They just need to be told what to do so that their life is more manageable and they have more energy and they can get what they need to do done without feeling like crap.
Yeah,
And like
absolutely.
that's like literally end of sentence. Like we don't need to like, and like her book is so I mean as an exercise physiologist, I'm like, I freaking love this book. I rarely recommend it to anybody because it's got so much science in it. It's so pedantic, and her findings, they're really like they reflect on like the tiniest bit of community, which is like ultra endurance female ultra endurance athletes obsessed with data. And it's
Yeah.
like that's so little. Like it's so
Do you
little.
yeah, do you know the author name or the title of the
Yeah,
book?
it's Stacey Sims Roar, and
Okay.
she's who made Fitter Woman. And like honestly, like I like her stuff is good. It never really went anywhere just because like it's not layman
It's very
science.
niche. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like I mean, I appreciate it because I'm like, that's the stuff I want to win with. Like, don't give me layman. Like, I'm supposed to give that to my clients. Like, I'm the translator. I need to, I want to know all the things, right? And like, I want to make it accessible to everybody. Anyway, but so what I teach it as in the quad phasics. So like we have 4 phases, and actually all these 4 phases link up with the natural cycle of life and death, with the seasons, with spring, summer, fall, winter, with the cycles of the moon, with new moon, waxing moon, full moon, waning moon. Right. And so that's how I teach it, as like this, like everything that grows has a cycle of death. And in fact, like you have to trim the fat in order to be excellent. Like there's only one thing in the world that grows linearly, and we call it cancer. Right.
Right.
It's like we go through this and like the weeping uterus, all this like stuff. But so I teach it in so there are 4 phases of the cycle. So we'll just start with yeah, we'll start with so so let's start with menses. Menses is the new moon. It is akin to winter. It is like the cycle, it is the death cycle. It's the shedding of the uterus. It's a time for relaxation and reflection. It's a time of deep letting go and forgiveness. The energy here is passive and withdrawn. So it's like it is the most yin energy. And we think about like, if you know about like yin and yang energy,
Mhm.
like this is like, it's darkness, it's coldness, it's wet, it's like you just want to be left alone. And this is really fantastic, excuse me, for stuff like, as far as fitness is concerned, I always recommend that women, depending on your period, like if you have a lighter period 1 day, if you have a heavier period 3 days, but you take the first 1 to 3 days off physically, in fitness, either doing just taking it off and doing some gentle stretching and just sort of moving how your body wants to move, or just doing some leisurely walking. By the way, asterisk, I recommend every woman do more low cortisol physical activity, such as walking, leisurely bike riding, just hanging out, and super important for hormonal health in general. Yeah. So anyway, so menses. So take the first 1 to 3 days off,
Mhm.
and then and this when we do the 4 phases of the cycle, we're go. Let me rewind a little bit. So
Sure.
we're going to take that ideal 28-day cycle. We're going to cut it in 4 slices. The number 1 day, 1 through 7, is the menstrual phase. 7 through 14 is the pre-ovulation phase. 14 through 21 is the premenstrual phase, is ovulation phase, and then it's like the premenstrual phase is 21 through 28. So if our menses phase is 7 days long, you may or may not bleed that long. That's fine. And it'll be shorter if your whole cycle is shorter, right? So we take the first 1 to 3 days off, and then we take the next 2 or 3 days after that as sort of like sort of going half speed, like a train, just sort of slowly starting up. And by the end of the time, we're back at 100%. This is a really fantastic time to like do review work. I always recommend that women review their goals, review their relationships, review what needs to get done, and just take notes for the upcoming cycle. This is a trim the fat period. So it's like, if you're working on projects, like check in with those projects and just review stuff, take some notes, because next week is going to be action taking week, right? So the next week we get to the pre-ovulation phase, and this is a very masculine type energy. It is active and it is social. So we are going full steam ahead. We're working at 110%, checking in with our teams. I always recommend that women plan ahead during this time, because we are very creative, and we're very dynamic, and we're thinking about things that need to get done. We're armed with our notes from that review period, and we're gonna figure out how to implement stuff. On the fitness side, this is the strength training. This is
Mhm.
like, we are building strength foundations. We're doing our 5x5s or 3x10s, all that good stuff, all the foundations of strength training. We're going heavy, going hard. We actually need less sleep in this portion of our phase during like the pre-ovulation ovulation phase. We need less sleep, whereas menses, we need on average anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes more. So don't be afraid to sort of burn the midnight oil during this phase and the next phase, because like we're in our go. We're in our go mode. Yeah. And then the next day, ovulation happens pretty much exactly in between. So it'd be day 14. But since we're still kind of we're riding high on that through pre-ovulation, we're riding high on that increase of testosterone and estrogen. It peaks at ovulation, and then it's coming back down slowly. Usually women still feel pretty good. That's why the ovulation phase is like from ovulation to a week, um, uh, for 1 week. And then, so again, this is another period of like 110% full steam ahead. If you're wondering how strong your body is, and as far as fitness is concerned, this is literally the best time to test your strength. Do the ones, twos, and threes, do the sprints, do the power workouts, all that stuff, anything to build muscle again, or just stay on your strength training on the strength foundations basis. Because I don't obviously, you and I would never recommend somebody test their 1RMs every single month. That's just
Right.
super silly.
Mhm.
But if you do want to see truly how amazing you could quite possibly be, then do it during ovulation. As far as
And
working,
so,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
so maybe for somebody who was like an endurance athlete or something, this would also be a good time to maybe test, like, oh, try to go for a PR if it's like a 5K or a 10K PR or something like that. Maybe do a
Yeah,
time
yeah.
trial to see how fast you could run.
Yeah, exactly. This would be like pushing the limits of your ability. This
Mhm.
is also, if you're training for a marathon and stuff, you can do the longer runs during this time, but this is also a really good, like when I was doing a lot of endurance work, I used to do like what I called breath play. So it was like I would really push myself for 30 seconds and then recover, like push myself at like 80 to 90% for 30 seconds and then recover at like 70% for 60 seconds and then just go up and just sort of do these cycles of like push, pull back a little bit, push, pull back a little bit. And overall, those are the sets and reps of strength training and endurance. So
Yeah, we
I'm sure
call
you know. Yeah.
in running we call those fartleks. I think it's like a Swedish word that means
Yeah.
speed play, I
Yeah.
think. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically the
Speed play.
30 seconds you run as hard as you can, and you don't necessarily recover fully, but you're like, 90%, 60%, 90%, 60%. Those workouts
Exactly.
suck. Those are the worst. Our coach used to use a
Yeah.
whistle, and you would blow the whistle and you run as hard as you can, and you blow it again and you walk, and
Oh.
you don't ever know when he's going to blow it again. So anyway, not to
Yeah.
go on a
Yeah.
tangent.
No, dude. I'm glad that like there's like actually like I
It's a funny
think I
word too, like fartlek.
yeah.
We always made fun of
I
it,
know
but
fart like I totally knew that word, but since I don't like I'm not I get endurance athletes that are looking to strength like for strength training. You know what I mean? So like looking
for
how to
sure.
marry those.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know the endurance words anymore. Um, yeah. So fartleks would be super good right now. In addition to just checking out your endurance and your pain tolerance is super high during ovulation, which is also something that they found. Yeah. So, so that's working out. Okay. So then we get into the premenstrual phase, which is 1 week before your period. And this is like this always gets a bad rap. Okay. We have to think about like I was gonna say like the menses, like we think about like the goddess archetypes. The menses is the crone, she's the old wise woman. The pre-ovulation is the maiden. She is full of energy, full of innocence, and going out there and exploring the world. The ovulation is the mother. She is pregnant with possibilities, very nurturing, very social. Yeah, if you want to, this is probably when your wife schedules all of her like Zoom meetings and check-ins and filmings.
Right.
Yeah, this is why like when I'm ovulating, I'm like, okay, we're just filming this week because I am cute. Like, yeah.
Schedule all my podcasts for these 7 days
Yeah.
right now. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. And the good thing is like you have the social energy and the grace to like endure a whole week of being social like that. Because the next week, pre-menstruation, you're gonna it's like it's a week, it's active, but it's withdrawn. And this is like a really important thing. I feel in like Western philosophy, we don't actually have a lot of wild woman archetype. The archetype where we had the mother, the maiden, the crone, this is the wild woman archetype. This is the witch, this is the healer, this is the medicine woman, this is the woman hunting on her own out in the middle of the woods. Like this is a wild woman. And if we go into other philosophical like other cultures and their philosophy, like she's the Hindu goddess of death and destruction, but she's also the goddess of like birth and relife. She's the ultimate wild woman goddess. She's not cruel or unkind. She's gotten a reputation of that, but she just understands that sometimes you have to destroy things in order to make room for others. And this is typically like philosophically, it's been a feminine trait, like the chaos of woman, right? But like in Western philosophy, like we don't really use this archetype a lot. And like with our like Judeo-Christian roots, we sort of tend to burn witches and medicine women. So we don't have, if you think about like we have the triple goddess, it's actually quadruple goddess, it's the wild woman. And so this is a time she is withdrawn. So she's not being super social, but she's active. She wants to be left alone to finish her projects. She wants to be left alone to consult that to-do list that she made 2 weeks ago when she was in her pre-ovulation dynamic, really positive phase. She just wants to get things done, do all the menial tasks. This is usually when I schedule like all of my financial, like all my back end stuff. When I'm looking at analytics, when I'm doing my finances, when I'm just sort of like checking in on like who I need to call back and like making notes like that and like sending in emails and stuff like that. It's the begrudging work that you can probably do in front of the TV. It's not super depth taking, but it's very important because it makes the business roll forward. That's the best time to do that, right? And then as far as fitness goes, this is sort of the burn period. This is the front half of the cycle is the building period. The last part of the cycle is the burn period. So what I would do is I cut intensity and I increase volume. And a lot of times I'll even just cut the intensity and take the volume out a little bit, but put spurts of cardiovascular components in there. So if somebody came to me and it was like, I have a 5x5 squat and 3 sets of something strength training over here, I'd be like, okay, well, like, let's make this like a 4x10 squat and do like 30-second sprints in the middle of it. And then we'll take like, you have your super strength training superset after that. Let's do like heavy kettlebell swings. Let's add a third component, do heavy kettlebell swings to get yourself out of breath. So that's how I like really augment the strength training for the premenstrual cycle, and just like being able to just like take off a little bit of expectation and put in a more of a cardiovascular component. Like the women leave the gym, they're like, they feel fresh, they feel refreshed, because like you don't have a lot of strength, you don't have a lot of intensity. And it's also like yeah, doing a lot of strength training during this time when you have high progesterone and almost no testosterone or estrogen in your body. Well, a little bit of estrogen, but it doesn't lay down muscle nearly as well, and you're just not going to feel as good. And if there's one thing that I've learned about coaching women, is that women hate being tired. You A man, like, you can coach a man and he'll be like, oh, I worked out so hard, I'm gonna need a nap. Like, oh, I'm fucking tough.
Hmm.
And like a woman is like, I worked out so hard, I need a nap. I cannot take a nap. I have 15 million things to do and I have to cook dinner. Like, she's
uh,
not gonna be happy.
mhm.
So it's like you really have to like keep that in mind, that coaching women and men versus women in general is going to be different. The way you talk to them is different, the motivations are different. But also, like, you can't gas a woman who's not a competitive athlete. She's got so many other things to do. Like, she's going to be pissed if she has to take a nap. And she's going to be mad if it's like, if she's in her premenstrual phase and she's got a lot of stuff to do and she just kind of wants to be left alone, and she already needs she needs 30 to 60 more minutes of sleep than she did a week ago. She's not going to be happy with a high intensity, high volume workout.
Yeah.
She wants to sweat, she wants to breathe hard, she wants to feel fresh, like she did something, and then home and do the rest of what she needs to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the overview of the four port
No, that
phases.
was an awesome overview, and very informative for me, and I hope for listeners as well. And as I was like listening to all of this, I think that it is pertinent to point out that clearly we're talking about what women can do to optimize their health and fitness, but this stuff can be just as useful for partners, whether that be boyfriends, girlfriends, significant others, someone you live with, because they need to understand these as well. Because I
Yeah.
think that you have to know how to approach your significant other during these times, because there, as you mentioned, there are certain temperaments associated with each. They're going to be in certain states of sort of introversion and extroversion. So I guess maybe speaking to, for a second, the partners of the women, how could, whether it's a coach or maybe a spouse or a significant other, how can they maybe approach women during each of these cycles? We don't have to go into a lot of detail, but just in general,
Yeah.
how might they want to look at this? I know you mentioned a little bit about the coaches, don't push maybe during this phase and push more during
Yeah.
this phase, but how can we, and I include myself in this, but approach our significant others during some of these times?
Yeah, that's a really great question too, because I actually I get a lot of messages from fathers of teenage daughters that
I bet. Yeah.
and it like warms my heart so much. I hope I don't cry. Like every time I bring this up, I like tear up a little bit. I think it's so and so wonderful. They want to know how to work out with their girl, and are you back? Are you back?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, so they want to learn how to like work out with like they go to the gym with their daughters and they're like, I want to do a better job and I want to like understand her better and have her do better at her sport. And so I actually wrote an ebook for them called Cycle Fundamentals. It's like a teen friendly book that they creepy and talking about sex and stuff like that. So and then I talked, and that gives like a good overview of how you should approach it. But basically just know, like, first and foremost, like, I want men and women to understand this, is that you are all 4 phases of your cycle. You're not a crazy lady, right? Reasonable, something's wrong. That's like an actual sign. Like if you have crazy mood swings that are affecting your relationship or pain that's affecting your daily activity, something's wrong. Call me, call your doctor, most likely your naturopath. She'll probably have a better answer for you. But yeah, so it's just like, so A, be gracious and like understand, like sometimes like, dude, she just wants to be left alone, like literally, like just like leave her alone. If you know her period's coming up, and like honestly, like good boyfriends, good husbands, like kind of track their period. My husband doesn't have to, because I'm very vocal. I have trained myself over these past 10 years in the gym and with my husband to be vocal about where I am. But like it's done around that. I mean, don't be a shitty partner, but also just be understanding that like maybe she just wants to be left alone. Like maybe if like she's like, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't go to the, I totally forgot to cook, or I forgot to do this.
Mhm.
Like instead of being like, dude, like I told you to go to the store, it's just like, that's fine. I'll just order pizza today. Like, and just get pizza. And she might be like, "Meh, pizza," and be like, hey, there's food. Okay.
Right.
Like, so like,
Yeah.
I'm not a big like, because what's important, not that there's like broccoli steamed to utmost perfection where it still has all the vitamins. What matters is that there's food in the bellies of the people you love, right?
Mhm.
That's the big thing that matters, right? So like know that you're most likely to get a favor done when she's ovulating and when she's social, right? If you want to ask for permission to do anything, ovulation is probably the best time to ask. And if you want to just leave the house and play golf for a weekend, do it when she's about to have her period. She might bitch and moan for a little bit, but she'll most likely appreciate the having the whole house to herself during those times.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm taking detailed notes here.
Yeah, exactly. Let me know what you want to do. I'll tell you the best phase for it. And like that's the other thing. It's like you don't have to like act like all these things are like you need to be a better partner. Like listen,
Mhm.
everybody needs to be a better partner to everybody. But like her having her period doesn't mean that you have to change your life and you have to be like, "Oh, sweetheart queen." Like that's not it. Like just give her space whether she's asking for it or not. You know what I mean? Like plan something with the kid, like take the kids out of the house for a couple hours so she can just be grumpy or take a bath or like do whatever. Like just make sure dinner's like pick up something on the way home for dinner, even if it's just like $6 roast chickens from the grocery store. Just kind of take one or two things off her plate, not a big deal. And like maybe just remove yourself from the plate altogether for a couple hours, because when you come home, she'll be like, oh, thank God, I feel so much better. Let's hang out instead
Yeah.
of, just yelling at you because she's just kind of like just frustrated and listless and like feels like she needs to be doing something, but doesn't really know what she needs to do. So yeah.
No, absolutely. It's all about flexibility. And again, I think that it's important. And sometimes, eventually if you're with someone long enough, you kind of learn and without necessarily tracking their cycle, you can kind of be like, okay, I think they're, maybe it's this, they're in, this phase, one or the other phase. And it's like just based on kind of maybe how they talk or what they're in the mood for and things like that, as you mentioned before. But I think it's also good that, when women are vocal with their significant other and just be like, listen, like, it doesn't need to be like this secret, you just like tell you,
Yeah.
hey, I want to be left alone. I'm in my premenstrual phase or whatever like that. Just leave me alone. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I got it. Point taken. And I don't,
Yeah.
then you don't really need to address the elephant in the room, and then it's everybody's kind of on the same page. So I think that sometimes is like the best way as well, sort of, rather than like beating around the bush and just talking about these things. I mean, being vocal,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah, I've made it a point to be vocal, especially in the gym as I was coaching, because like this is my work. But also I wanted women to understand it's okay to talk about these things. And if some guy's like, "Ugh, your period, like blah blah tampons," I was like, that's his problem.
Yeah.
Like that is, it's even unnecessarily sometimes I'd be like, hey, or let me know. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good. Yeah, sometimes even when I was just not even teaching a class, but like taking a class to be like, hey, Rich, like I'm getting my period next week. I'm gonna put a cardiovascular component in here and drop the weight. And it's like the coach is like, okay. But I'm like, I said that for all the women in the class and not
Hmm.
for him and not for me, but I mean, kind of like business, like, but yeah. So it's important that women are vocal about their needs, and that also that they're aware of their needs. Cause that's the thing. If you don't understand your cycle, like that's why they're called cravings. It's like these needs happen and you have no way to identify them. It's like having no emotional vocabulary. You're just overcome with this emotion. We see it in toddlers. You're just overcome with this emotion. You can't identify it. You can't express it. And then so what comes out is just this tornado of discomfort. And it's like that with your period if you don't understand it. So
Absolutely. So what about syncing, say, nutrition with these phases? Do you recommend to women that you're coaching that they alter nutrition in any way between the different phases? Or, are there certain things, obviously you mentioned craving. So it's like, maybe if you're craving something, that's a sign that your body is saying, hey, give me more of this mineral or vitamin or something. But, do you adjust kind of nutrition to these different phases?
yes and no. I follow a couple of core principles, but some of the nutrition, the cycle syncing nutrition stuff, again, like I don't know if you've gathered this. I'm really against like being like super pedantic about stuff, because it's largely not helpful to be like to focus on minutia when it's like it's 80% you doing something, 20% what you do, and that's what it's like. That's what it's like in health and fitness. And like people always want a more complex answer. I can't give one because it's useless. Anyway, I mean,
yeah, people want you to say how many carbs should I eat during my premenstrual phase, and how many, how much protein should I eat in grams per day when I'm ovulating? It's like, okay, well, there's no answer to that.
Yeah. Okay. Because first off, it's bio individual. Okay. So like your lifestyle, your nutritional needs and like your preferences are going to come into play. So like you have to approach it like that. But so like that's why I'm like, I don't like it gets a little bit too pedantic. Also, when we get really pedantic about like what like vitamins and minerals you need, like those definitely change from like the follicular phase to the luteal phase. Like it's also very difficult because like a lot of my work is based around coaching people through nutrition and you know what I'm saying? Like most fit people eat largely the same
Yeah,
every day
for sure.
or every week. Like it's not, we don't, our palate, like our plate is not super crazy variable. While it's like, it'll still be like meat, potatoes, and vegetables. Like you might have like red potatoes, purple potatoes,
Right.
potatoes,
There's a
white potatoes.
rotation in a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, there's a rotation. Yeah. Or
Beef,
like,
steak, chicken,
yeah,
repeat.
venison. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's like, but I try to get people to largely eat the same stuff.
Mhm.
So it's like when we were talking about like, no, this week you need to be focusing on vitamin D. This week you need to be focusing. I'm like, no.
Mhm.
Let's stop. Because that's the other thing is like we want to take things off the plate of women who are typically the caretakers and the grocery shoppers and the cooks of the house. We don't need them making a specialized menu for each and every week. Like there are some women that are that organized. I will work with
Yeah.
them. That's
Yeah.
cool. But other than that, I'm like, no. So I operate on these principles largely is that, okay, the reason why a lot of women crave chocolate right before their period is because cacao is the only plant source with the highest levels of iron and magnesium.
Mm.
So, right, we are
Yeah.
losing iron as we're losing blood.
Hmm.
Also, everybody needs more magnesium. They found that in something like 90 something percent of women who had suffered greatly from eating, who were active in their suffering from eating disorders, had a severe magnesium deficiency. So like magnesium, as pregnant women to keep their hormones, to keep their mood in balance, they need magnesium. So upping magnesium intake is always, always good. Most of your sweets cravings will go away if you have magnesium. And I don't like magnesium citrate. I like to do magnesium chloride. It's a powder. You just do 1 tablespoon in a liter of water, or 1 teaspoon, excuse me, in a liter of water. And that's like 6,000 milligrams of magnesium a day. It's perfect.
Yeah, my wife
So
and I have been doing a daily magnesium. We do it right before sleep, actually. I think we do 2
yeah,
teaspoons maybe right before sleep.
yeah.
It's like
So
400 milligrams. So yeah,
that's probably magnesium citrate because
I
that's
believe
usually
it's citrate. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, that's the one that they usually use for sleep and for like if you have constipation or something like
Mm.
that. So I did like I'm right now I'm taking prenatals because I'm pregnant, so I get a lot of magnesium citrate there. But I just do the magnesium chloride just because like it also you can make your own like magnesium lotion if you want to with
Mm.
magnesium chloride. I'm all about the DIY beauty, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a different topic. Yeah, so I always want women to up their iron and up their magnesium. That's why in the luteal phase, when we are burning anywhere from 100 to 300 more calories, I'm like, after you ovulate, start eating more protein in your meals, right? So that we get more calories and a little bit more protein and iron. And then B, like have cacao in your kitchen somewhere. So, and by cacao, I don't mean cocoa, not like Hershey's cocoa, the sweetened,
Right.
hot, sugary drink. I mean like cacao, like bitter, makes you sneeze, like no, like it's just pure chocolate. You can put that all over the place. Like you can even if you're making like soups and stews. Like I make it's not a mole, but it's like a mole inspired because mole is very complex to make. But even in my chili, if I want something heartier, like a stew, I'll put some like cacao powder in there and it makes it like a lot richer. But also like if I'm really craving chocolate, like then what I'll do is I'll even put some cacao in my coffee, or I'll put some cacao, or I'll just make like a kind of like a really thick cacao drink with a little bit of like salt and some coconut cream and some like honey or something like that. And so like have cacao so you have like a source of chocolate without actually having like the sugar and the wax and the
Mm-hmm.
calories from chocolate, right? So that's the luteal phase. And then the follicular phase, like what I do is like the first half of your cycle, you're going to be eating well, not the follicular phase, but the pre-ovulation ovulation phase, you're going to be eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, anything raw, crunchy, things that are lighter carbohydrates, lighter poultry, lighter meats, lighter, fresh, raw, steamed, stuff like that, right? And the latter half of your phase in the premenstruation and menses, you're going to be eating a lot more roasted vegetables, cooked, deeper, richer foods that are more comforting and less work to break down because there's so much work going on around, like there's so much happening in your body, especially the digestive system. And when we talk about women with like fibroids, endometriosis, adenomyosis, all these like estrogenic issues surrounding your period, you don't want anything that's hard to digest. So it's like the first half of your cycle, keep everything light, fresh, healthy, raw. Well, not healthy. I mean, keep everything healthy all the time.
Sure.
But like you want everything light, fresh, and raw. And then the last half of your cycle, you want things that are cooked, hearty, rich. So, and those are sort of the principles. So cook like the fresh side, the rich side, and then keep your magnesium and your iron levels like on the level because a lot of issues can be solved with just like magnesium and even some zinc. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think those are good principles. And again, not too pedantic, as you mentioned before. Like I think people can appreciate just these kind of general recommendations, and they might, in a way. Do you find that in the people you coach, those recommendations sort of line up with what they might be craving, or do some people kind of have to alter maybe their foods based on what you might prescribe to them?
Oh, yeah. I feel like they do actually alter what they're craving or like desiring to eat. A lot of women, unfortunately, get in the trap of eating so many salads. And I'm like, girl, like, I don't know if you've gone 6 weeks eating just salads, but it's like a miserable existence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the quickest way to be like, nobody loves me. It's to just eat cold food
Right.
all the time. I'm like, you can't do that. You need something warm and hearty and easy
Mm-hmm.
to digest. I even have like a series of like summer soups that I make with like lemon and like lighter flavors that are just, and it's like, dude, yeah, I'm eating soup in the middle of summer, but it's a poultry soup and it's got lemon in it and it's like leek and like, I make a potato salad with like green apples and leek in it. So to like lighten it up, but it's still it's hearty and it's like easier to digest than just eating a bunch of roughage. Like that is like, you don't want to be eating roughage when you're anywhere near your period. It's just like it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It
because you
doesn't
want
make
like
anybody.
as you mentioned, your body's doing so much and you just want to kind of
Yeah,
limit the amount of work
yeah,
that it has to do. So limit, what it has to break down and digest, so on and so forth. And,
exactly,
it'll probably be happier with you for sure.
exactly.
So I want to, talk briefly about menopause, because obviously we've been talking about cycle syncing the entire time, but obviously, when we get to women who are of the age of menopause, that no longer really applies because they no longer have sort of these hormonal cycles. So I assume that you have clients who you coach who are postmenopausal, and so what are kind of some of the considerations around menopause that you recommend? How do you approach maybe what we've been talking about regarding work and training? What are some considerations given that we don't necessarily have these same hormonal fluctuations after menopause? And I say we, the royal we, I
Yeah.
obviously don't
Yeah.
have
The
any.
royal we.
I'm not
My
speaking
husband and I
personally,
say
but
that. My husband and I say that. He's like, yeah, we need to get that, well, that like shelf fixed. I was like, oh, the royal we, aka me
right.
and my toolbox. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cycling women, when they reach
Yeah.
that stage where they no longer are cycling, what are some considerations that they need to take into,
Yeah.
that they need to think about?
Yeah. Well, first off, like I have truly always loved coaching like the 55 plus demographic because like fitness and health means exponentially more to them. And it's like it's truly a joy to be like, yeah, they're like able to play with their grandkids or like bring in all their groceries or tie their shoe. Like it's my favorite. And I would like to point out that like going into menopause is a second puberty and it's whereas like the first puberty we went into adolescence, like in this one we're going into wisdom where you are the seed of knowledge for the next generation to like bloom and grow and blossom and like your presence in society and what you know is very important to share and to pass down. And like that's what I always say because women that are at that age always get dismissed as aging. They're very rarely
Mhm.
represented anywhere and like they're seen as just like old baddies that like don't know what they're talking about. And I'm like, "Oh my god, like why are we treating our elders like this?"
Right.
Like this woman, like I have like saved so much money in like coaching and tutoring simply because I had older clients and they like just imparted all their wisdom on me and I really appreciate it. So yeah, so we do need to think of it. I like to think of it as a second puberty. Like everything's changing. We need to recalibrate everything. And what's really alarming, so I would also like to say that I still use cycle syncing with those women. We just cycle sync with the actual moon.
I see.
So, cause yeah, so and that makes it pretty fun. And like I'm always kind of like I never know how that's gonna go over, but I guess life people in general are getting a lot more esoteric. Maybe it's just the people I hang out with. But it's also like people are like, man, that makes sense. Like if you ask any like waitress or police officer or fireman, like they're like, yeah, people go bonkers during the full moon. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
my wife's mother used to work as kind of a nurse in the neonatal ICU, and just being around in a hospital, and she's always like, yeah, I know it's kind of like this modern myth, but she's like, when it's a full moon, like there's like crazy stuff happens.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I actually like I try not to take plane like I try not to fly in a plane at night during the full moon
Oh,
it's
geez.
creepy. Just because it's
Yeah.
creepy. It's creepy to
Mhm.
be in the air and looking at a full moon. It's like
Yeah.
doo, doo, doo. Yeah, so that's anyway, that's me. But no, so I was going to say so I actually have them because like the principles are the same and I believe that women do best in this cyclical nature being connected and a part of something, also going through these like growing and death phases. And especially if you're like self-employed or like it just gives you some structure, some external structure. And that's something that's really important that like that's something that me
Oh, I think you're back.
there we go. Okay. Where do we leave off?
You were talking about needing structure and just like
Yeah,
structuring something. Yeah.
perfect.
So I
Yeah,
can
so
delete that little pause there.
yeah, editing, honestly, a miracle. Yeah, so I use the cycles of the moon because also it gives women a little bit more structure to their eating, to their fitness, and to their creative planning. So, and it's just like cyclical, like we've been moving on this cycle and rolling on this cycle for our whole lives. It makes sense to just roll on with another cycle. So even in
Absolutely.
my,
Yeah.
yeah, even in my weekly, like in my weekly check-in, in my weekly written check-in with my clients, I ask them what day of the cycle that they're on today. And then I ask, like, for postmenopausal, I ask them, where's the moon? Like, and it's like, yeah, that's important. Where is the
Mhm.
moon? So, yeah, so I use the cycle sync with them. And then also, what is it? Postmenopausal women. Weight gain is a big issue. So are hot flashes. So when we talk about hot flashes, this is indicative of estrogenic excess. So when we talk about like the pain by like fibroids, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I
Okay.
can hear you, but just
Okay,
froze.
good. Okay, good. Yeah, so we talk about like the pain surrounding the period from like fibroids and stuff. All these are like all these symptoms are exacerbated by estrogen. So the good news about hot flashes is that if we reduce the estrogen, but also if we increase muscle mass, we will actually experience less intense hot flashes
Hmm.
and less frequent hot flashes. This is why strength training is super important for women, not only because bone density is super sexy. Trying to run a marketing campaign, it's not been very successful, but I'm telling you, bone density is fantastic. But also just to build more muscle tissue to make sure that like when we do go through the transition into postmenopausal, that we're not getting these wild, like I have some clients that are kept up by like 5 or 10 hot flashes a night.
Mm.
And that's like, okay, then we are really off. That is like red alert. We need to tear down the diet, get rid of all inflammation stuff. You need to work out like continuously. The other thing, so that's a concern, is the hot flashes. Another concern is apple pattern weight gain. Body. So you start to gain weight towards the midsection, which is a more androgenic weight gain pattern, more male pattern weight gain. And
Mhm.
that's like very alarming. Like, do not, I am pregnant and I just lost my waist for the first time in my life recently. It's not a good feeling. But like, so like when it happens in menopause, women really kind of like they freak out. So like the first thing I do with them is like I get when we talk about those, and again, those are bio individual depending on what their signs and symptoms are. And then the third thing I do is I say we're going to do 3 months of calorie tracking, because like it's very important that they really do understand how much they're eating or how much they're not eating, because people are like, oh, I just smell bread and I gain weight. And like this is not a very a hip thing to say, but like people don't gain weight for no reason. Like, like
For some reason, that's controversial. It's like,
yeah,
no, I'm cutting calories,
yeah,
but I'm gaining weight. Well, you're not doing one of those things, I
yeah. Then
guess.
you're
Then,
not. Yeah, exactly. In
yeah.
fact, I
Hmm.
literally, one of my clients right now is going through. I told Let me know when you're back.
Yep, back.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So heart attacks are usually the health crisis episode, but women don't get heart attacks typically. They
Hmm.
don't until they're like 80. So this woman, I was like, you need to, she had an issue with her thyroid where her like TSH levels or something, one of her numbers that's supposed to be what like is normally at 7, which is already high, was at like 47. And I was like, and she had no energy. And like her doctor was like, a lot of people come in here and they're like, oh, I can't lose weight because of my thyroid, can't lose weight because of
Hmm.
my thyroid, can't lose weight. He's like, you're the only person who can actually say, I can't lose weight because of my thyroid. I was like, all right, well, code blue, we need to go full steam ahead. There's no pussyfooting around. We need to like really address the issues that are coming in, and you have to comply. Otherwise, like, I can't help you. Right. So then what do? I'm like, no more hand sized portions. We're counting calories. And of course, I put her on like a caloric maintenance, and she's been losing a pound a week. Right. So it's
Wow.
like, Even the woman who had a hormonal excuse to not lose
Uh-huh.
weight, once she actually started tracking her calories, lost weight. So, and it's so important, this recalibration, because like honestly, and especially in America, we're so disconnected from healthy portion sizes. Calorie counting is very, very important. And you don't have to do it forever, but if you
Mhm.
do it for 3 months every couple years, like you can keep yourself on really good track.
No, absolutely. And a lot of people, like you just mentioned, are either underestimating or overestimating. In most cases, probably underestimating how much that they're actually eating. Some, maybe if it's women, they may be overestimating how much they're eating. But, in many cases, if it's a weight gain issue, people are pretty bad at recalling or kind of estimating how much
Yeah.
they eat. So I'm sure that's a valuable practice. Is it more common, are you seeing more women postmenopausal or not, who are maybe they track? Do you find that more often they're underestimating how much they're eating or they're overestimating it?
Um,
And by how much?
what,
Do you have any idea of that? How much they're overestimating
yeah.
if they are?
So, what's really insidious about women and portion control or diet or calorie counting is that a lot of women are under eating for multiple days on end, and then they binge, and
Mm,
they do it without really noticing. Um, so it's like, so a lot of women think that they need to be eating way less than they actually should. And then because of that, they, of course, it's like a rubber band snapping back, right?
right.
So there are some hormonal issues where for a little while, if you actually eat more, you do lose weight, because what's happening is that your body is just like holding on to everything, because you're going through these like feast and famine cycles with like, and being stressed out. I would
Mhm.
like to also add that like the women who are under eating and gaining weight, like under eating with a binge cycle and gaining weight, or like holding on to weight, they most likely also have stress management issues and sleeping issues. And like I'm telling you right now, you can do all the cycle syncing, you can take all the supplements, you can do all the calorie counting. You will never improve your health unless you get like minimal amounts of sleep and get extra sleep here and there. That is just, it is the foundation to
Yeah,
health.
absolutely.
Yeah. So like you only learn one thing from this whole damn thing is I need to get more
Get your sleep.
sleep. But insidious things about women in food is that like my fitness pal is like the greatest. I hate this app so much. I mean, it's a useful tool. What happens is that it routinely tells only my female clients to eat 300 to 500 calories less than they should be eating a day. And
Mm,
it's, I'm like, I'm so freaking mad at this app for doing that. And I don't know why. Like, I will put in the same numbers to like two other calculators that I use. And it's just like,
mm.
it's night and day. And I'm like, listen, you can use it to track it. That's fine. It syncs up with a lot of things. And I totally get it. But do not, like, I will give you your caloric intake numbers. Do not let MyFitnessPal do it. I have another app tracker that does a better job, but I still like to give I like to give my clients because a lot of people over or underestimate the amount of activity that they're doing. I think
Yes.
that's really where it comes in. And then also because they've never calorie counted, they don't realize like like my mom would come home and eat so many cashews, and then she'd have dinner and she wouldn't really want to eat that much dinner. I was like, well, yeah, you just ate like 800 calories in cashews.
Oh, yes, for
And
sure.
like, yeah. And because they're tiny, you think they don't have much like calories in them. And it's like, and that's where, and it's like these like little invisible, like people talk about soda, but I'm like, dude, it's like nuts, like finishing your child's food, like just kind of like binge eating or going for like extra, it's like these little places. So that's why it's important to like track calories and like actually get a good estimate, but also sit with your numbers for a couple of weeks. Like I'm always like, well, we have a new number goal. Like we're going to do this for 3 weeks and we'll see how you feel. And they're like,
Mhm.
blah, 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 a couple of days. I'm like, no, you really need like 3 weeks, like in order to
Yeah.
see anything. So yeah.
No, it's that's good information to know. And it's cool to hear that you're customizing it. And I think just teaching people like how to understand what they're eating, how to train, kind of how to synergize those two, eating and training and all that. It's clearly important, and I think that it's I think women are interested in doing it, but they just don't have a resource. And obviously, you're that resource for a lot of people, which is great. In the last, few minutes that we have, I do want to get to some listener questions that we had on Twitter, because we had a lot of good questions, and I want to make sure, kind of mindful of your time. So I think we had about, let's see, 4 questions. So I'll just start off with the first one here. This one is from Alejandro. So he's asking, what's the best way to introduce a former NCAA volleyball player, a female, to endurance sports, primarily cycling? I'm thinking maybe fast twitch fibers in her are way more developed than her slow twitch. So what might be the best way to transition her from, say, a more power, strength oriented sport to endurance athletics? Kind of what would you maybe prescribe for her?
Well, first off, Plato needs also endurance. Endurance can mean 200 miles and endurance can mean
That's
20
true.
miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very wide. We just
Mhm.
everything over 5 miles is considered
Endurance, right? In
Yeah.
cycling, I think it's like over 50. Things change when you go from running to cycling, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, totally true. But figure out where she's going to be strong. If she is, honestly, I'm perhaps the wrong person to ask about this. I know
Mhm.
that what was I going to say? I was like, we can, there is like type 2, type 1, and like type 2B or
Yeah,
something like that.
2A,
Yeah.
2B, and then there's 2X, and then there's, type
Yeah.
1. So,
And one of those can be switched. One of those is like malleable between fast twitch, slow twitch. So it just goes through training. And then the other ones, they just stay as they are, and either you train them or you don't. And also our genetic propensities lean us towards one sport or the other. Also yeah, more power. Long story short, I wouldn't be too worried about it. Just introduce her to it, make sure she likes it. If she appreciates some sprints, make sure that she's doing more hill stuff, But if she is just like, no, I just want to go long, slow, hard for 150 miles, then I would say that this has to do more so with the desires of the athlete rather than the likes of the muscle, because endurance, and let's say she's just graduating, like say she's in her mid 20s, she's not going to get good at endurance sports until she's in her mid 30s
mhm.
anyway. That's usually people peak. And 10 years of training will literally fix any gaps in there. If she's a little bit older, well, then her power, unless she's been training like a power athlete for the past 10 years or however long it was since she graduated from college, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. Just get on the bike and see A, what you like, B, what you're good at. I'm personally I like hill climbing. I love going up and down the hills. I moved to a place that, I mean, it does have I have I'm in Las Vegas. There's a lot of mountains here. There's a lot of scenic stuff. But as far as road cycling, there's not a lot of up down that I'm used
Mhm.
to, that I grew up in when I was in LA. And so for me, the false flats and the long, slow flats and stuff like that, it's leg murder. I find it boring. I'm not very good at it. But if you get me, but I will go for miles and miles and miles and hours if you have me going up and down, up and down. So it'll just depend on if she's looking at racing, it'll depend on what her interests are. If she's looking at training, just get her on a bike. Because also with endurance, it's always time in the saddle. It takes time to develop it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So patience and time, I think, is the best
Yes,
answer to that question.
exactly.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
but you give Stacy Sims and her book Roar a shout out.
Yes, for
She
sure.
does focus on endurance athletes and cycle syncing, so that might be a good book for you to pick up if you're really interested in the data and numbers. But also there are some special considerations like the overheating towards the last part of the cycle.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll definitely recommend that he check out that book as well. So next question from Dula Bati 2021. Any basic or fundamental things women in their 60s should do to stay healthy? I need advice for my mom.
Yeah, lift weights, avoid sugar, and make sure you walk. It's true. It's the simple things. And also, I also want to point out that even though 55 plus community, the older population, just because they're old doesn't mean they're broken or frail. They need to be under barbells and free weights. They do not need to be in machines. Machines are not safer. They will keep you weak. In fact, people always say that oh, those are good beginner ones. And I'm like, no, it's the opposite, because we need more balance. We need more like it's those neuromuscular developments that you get from free weights that especially older populations need as they start to lose balance. And so, like, balance is such a big thing in older populations. So make sure that she's lifting free weights and make sure that she's walking a lot and just avoiding sugar and inflammatory foods.
That could be like a good billboard on like the highway. Just lift weights, avoid sugar, and walk.
Yeah. Yeah,
A message
100%.
for everybody. Great.
Yeah.
So next question here, Ricky is asking, what are the best foods to eat while pregnant? How to appropriately work out while pregnant? Obviously, that could be a whole nother podcast in and of itself. So
Yeah.
maybe just a few general points there.
Like, I do not have more time today. We can reschedule. No, but I mean, that's a pretty complex question, but it's also fairly simple. Like, what we want to do in pregnancy is we want to get a variety of foods, make sure we're getting protein. This is I'm in the middle of my first pregnancy, and like I say, get a lot of protein, but like literally the first trimester, I couldn't eat anything but crackers. So if you're somebody who's suffering from morning sickness, it's literally just calories in. Again, like, try to get whole and healthy foods in: meats, potatoes, vegetables, all that kind of stuff. Indulge a little bit if you can. A really wonderful source of nutrition as far as meat sources are concerned is liver, either in pill form or pate. I love pate. I make pate. I also, very popular in my house is a liver meatloaf, which is like half liver, half regular meat. And that is like, liver is just so full of, like, it's chock full of so many vitamins and minerals. It's like not even funny. So liver is a good one. Make sure everybody recommend there's like all these like PSAs against like raw fish and shellfish. Like, it's totally fine. Don't go to a dirty restaurant. Women in Japan don't stop eating sushi because they're pregnant. They
Oh,
just like,
my wife is gonna love that answer because she has been
yeah,
dreading the day when we maybe do eventually get pregnant.
yeah.
We are like a weekly sushi date. She's like dreading having to end that.
Yeah.
So
Well, this is like a constant fight with my husband. I want to go out to sushi. I have to like sneak it in. I've snuck it in once at the beginning. But it's like, but he like won't believe me. I know he kind of does believe me, but this is our first. He was like, you
Mhm.
can't mess up my first.
Sure.
Like, right?
At least do everything right this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. But it's like a universal craving of women to crave fatty fish when they're
uh,
pregnant. And that's
uh-huh.
because like the omega-3s and the fat in there, like, it's so important to brain health and development for the fetus. So just make sure, like, the concern surrounding shellfish and sushi is like bacteria.
Right.
It's bad food practices, which you are in danger of no matter what
All
time
the time.
that you go
Exactly.
to.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you wanna watch out for that. Make sure that she's like taking like fish oil or something like that as well. Don't be afraid of sushi as long as it's a clean restaurant. And then as far as exercise is concerned, that is like, keep working out, keep lifting weights. What we want to do is we don't want to go max capacity. So we don't want to be working within like a 9 RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or like 90% of our VO2 max. We want to make sure that everything's like, so we don't have max out sprint sessions, we don't have max out lifting sessions, don't PR. You can, that being said, like, you can like working at like 8 RPE or like 85% max capacity is still a very decent workout.
Hmm.
And you can still build strength. In fact, it is more stressful to mom and the baby for her to stop working out during pregnancy. So like, keep that in mind. The other thing is that fitness will not induce any miscarriage whatsoever. In fact, the women who worked out had there's a difference in miscarriage, but it was so small that it was not scientifically significant, but it was still less. So so make sure that if you're
Clinically
working
significant.
out, yeah, clinically significant, yeah,
Right.
but still less. Right. So make sure that if you are working out before you continue to work out, there are so many augmented training programs. Like, I've been training pregnant women for a number of years. I still bought a pregnancy trainer because I was like, I need to do somebody else's workout. Like, I'm
Mhm.
sick of doing my own programming, just because by the time you get to the workout to do it yourself, you've already done it like 4 or 5 times in your brain. It's very boring. So, and coaches need coaches, right? So just make sure, again, making sure she's working with free weights. Overhead is a little bit tough on the pelvic floor. Really heavy overhead stuff is a little bit tough on the pelvic floor. But other than that, like, just make sure she keeps on working out. She's not working out at absolute max capacity, but that there's still some intensity to the workout. And then also make sure that she is focusing on diaphragmatic breathing and syncing the diaphragm with the pelvic floor, because that becomes an issue. And there are going to be a lot of questions surrounding this, but that is a completely different podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe saving for round 2 or something.
Yes.
But if Ricky, if you or anybody else are interested in learning, kind of doing a deep dive on exercise and pregnancy, episode 31 of my podcast, I actually interviewed Dr. Brittany Allman, and we talked all about kind of like intensities, kind of things to eat during exercise, structuring exercise. And I think she mentioned some of the studies that you just brought up about like lower rates of miscarriages in women who exercise, and then obviously lower rates of sort of, gestational diabetes, post-pregnancy hypertension, just any health outcome is improved if you exercise while you're pregnant, and they shouldn't be scared. Women shouldn't be scared to do it.
During birth, perineal tears during birth is much lower amongst active women. Yeah, that's another huge,
absolutely
big point. Yeah,
absolutely. So. All right. And so the last question here, Stacy says, hopefully not too late. This was on Twitter. And so no, I guess she wasn't too late. Would love to hear thoughts on endurance training differences during a women's cycle. We did, definitely cover this a lot. She says first half estrogen fueled energetic is very different than post ovulation, when progesterone slows me down and raises my heart rate, makes marathon training super fun. We did talk a little bit about that and sort of, the 2 halves of the phases, how to kind of structure endurance training. But do you have anything to maybe add there?
Yeah. I mean, we already kind of covered this. Again, I'm going to rep, especially for this, because she is already very knowledgeable. But again, Stacy Sims Roar, a cycle syncing endurance training, boom, right there. There's also like a little vignette in that book about, there was this world-class athlete. She was like an Olympic marathoner or something, and she was about to get her period. It looked like she was getting her period on race day. So like the male scientists that she was surrounded with, like not really understanding progesterone and estrogen, testosterone, what they did was they thought that she'd be like zonked on her period. So they delayed her period by injecting more progesterone into her body.
Oh no.
Yeah. And she completely overheated. She completely tanked. She lost. She was like in the lead by she was like the expected hopeful. Nobody else is going to win. And she sacked that race so hard. And it was just like, it was really, really sad. And she's like, I told them I should just let my body be, like, I should just have my period. Because what's really funny is that a lot of women, if you are cycle syncing, like if a lot of women will get in the gym and they'll be on their period and they're like, oh, I feel like Superman. It's because it's like we're digging bottom of the barrel. Plus, we just like that progesterone just crashed, and we're not like the progesterone is really limiting a lot of our strength gains and our energy and stuff. And then plus, I just believe that there's just like a survival mechanism. Like no woman is completely incapacitated by her period. If she is, she has a your underlying health issue that needs to be, especially during our period. But the thing is so it's like, so if she had just menstruated regularly, she probably would have been able to like give it her best, give it her all, and really dig deep into the barrel. But instead they just like pumped her full of synthetic loser hormone that wants to take a nap.
Oh no. Yeah. Very interesting though, but no good for her. So a good way to sabotage maybe the opposing team, but not something you want to do for your own athlete.
Yeah. Well, in the Olympics, they tend to frown upon pumping your athletes full of any kind of hormones.
Generally frowned upon. All right. Well, Ingri, this has been an awesome discussion. I've had a really good time learning a ton, and I know listeners are going to find this conversation very fascinating. So before we go, could you just maybe plug where listeners can find you on social media, if you have a website, and if they want to learn more about coaching services that you offer?
Yeah. So I am Ingri Pauline everywhere. By everywhere, I mean YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm mostly on Twitter. I have had a fraught relationship with Instagram, but I think it's changing. I'm mostly on Twitter, mostly because I'm a writer. And then my website is Ingri Pauline Athletics. That's INGRI PAULINE athletics.com. And then YouTube, I'm under Coach Ingri, or like at Ingri Pauline. And then, oh yeah, so my services, my coaching services, I actually just finished this 6-month women's health coaching pipeline. So this is, it is fitness and nutrition coaching. And then we also go over creative planning. And it is just like literally everything everything important that I know about women's health and fitness. And it's delivered to you in audio and video format. And it's coaching alongside with learning. This program isn't for everybody, but because I'm asking you to show up every day for yourself for 6 months, and either to learn or to work out. That doesn't mean we're going to be working out every single day, but it does mean that you need to be mindful every day. So I encourage, if anybody really wants to get like the nitty gritty on like their health, fitness, wellness mindset, and like really get into like the women's health aspect of it, in addition to being able to like kind of learn how to like do your work around your cycle as well. Definitely hit me up. I just finished this program. I ran it a couple times. It's freaking awesome. I truly wish I could like give it to the whole world, but you got to sign up for it first.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm mostly online. I do stuff out of Vegas, and I'll have some like probably some like retreats and in-person stuff coming up if you want to travel out here.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I will include links to all of those in the show notes so people can find you on social media, say hey, or, maybe hopefully, some people explore the coaching services or enroll in your program, because I think it sounds awesome. So anyway, yeah, Ingrid, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome format to like have enough space to get really into these topics. It was so great. I loved it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been great, of course. And if you ever have more info to talk about and want to do a round 2, just, let me know. Happy to chat again.
Oh, 100%. We can talk about pregnancy. Yeah.
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Yeah. And postpartum. Yeah. Since now it's like I'm getting my street cred now,
Yeah, you'll be experienced and enough to chat about it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Ingrid. Bye.
Bye.